Meeting minutes of the 7th.
So moved to.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes?
No, I'm good.
All right. We may vote. All in favor of the minutes of the 7th, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now the 20th. I have a motion for the minutes of the 20th.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, also any discussion on those minutes?
I don't know.
Yes, please. On page 1, under number 3, appointments, that's like the second to the last sentence where it says, Selectwoman Nosel reported that all 3 alternates are viable candidates, and through an email conversation with the Commission, it was clearly stated by the chair that the decision would be left up to the Selectmen. I would just like to add where it says after the chair of the Commission that she provided that email for the minutes.
Could you say that again?
Yep. This is the discussion where you brought one candidate instead of all 3 candidates up for
right. The language you want?
I would like added after the chair of the commission. And she provided these for the minutes because they weren't attached to the minutes, but I did provide a copy of the email exchange for the minutes.
Well, let me just say, I forgot to introduce Suzanne McCall, who's going to be helping us taking the minutes today. So, did you get what that is? All right?
Yeah.
To your satisfaction?
Yeah. You want a copy of that? Okay. Sure.
Right.
On page 3, under public comment, this would be something to be added after the third to the bottom line where it said, did he call First Selectman Griswold or call anyone? I would like to add, he referred to some visitors as a jihad. Got that?
Mr. Frampton, you say?
Well, it's the discussion with Mr. Frampton. But right before where it says Mr. Frampton said he and Tim have had a few conversations, I would like to add he referred to some visitors as a jihad.
Could that be a separate sentence?
Yes.
As he didn't talk to me about that before the meeting. So a separate sentence?
Yes, so it should say, Selectman Nosel asked in the 3 months he's been waiting, what did he do to get a response? Did he call First Selectman Griswold or call anyone? And then it should be added, he referred to some visitors as a jihad. I'll give this to you in a second. And then on page 4, under public comment, Mary Daly, I'd say Miss Daly, it says Ms. Daly expressed concerns, but I also like Ms. Daly Selectman Nosel for her service. Oh, sorry.
So then you have that one in terms of where it's supposed to be. All right. With those modifications, do we want to shall we approve the minutes as amended? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, good. Okay, the project updates will be, first up will be the Soundview sidewalks.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to add at this point. As I said last meeting, we're going through the permitting process for the transit hub at 290 Shore Road. The next process is for the special permit application to be approved by the Zoning Commission, and the public hearing begins October 12th. That meeting is at 6:30. Haven't seen the agenda yet, so I don't know exactly where we're on at the agenda, but all the abutters have been duly notified.
Okay, thank you. Concerning the Soundview sewers, we received a communication from the town of East Lyme talking about the arrangement between the Old Lyme beaches, the town of Old Lyme having to do with Soundview, and working with the intermunicipal agreement with East Lyme. And this will be, East Lyme is suggesting that instead of having one agreement with all four entities, that there be the three beach agreement and a separate town of Old Lyme agreement. I gather that this is because the towns of East Lyme and Waterford and New London are executing a new tri-town agreement, which we're not involved in, and so they seem to want to have this new separate agreement with Old Lyme. I don't really see why that would be necessary, but I guess it's on recommendation of the town council for East Lyme, so more discussion I think would be needed on that. I'm just hoping that this isn't going to involve a lot more process and expense creating a separate agreement rather than having it the way it was originally contemplated. So we'll get to the bottom of that. Otherwise, the bids are out having to do with the shared infrastructure and are due back this month. So hopefully by our next meeting we'll know a little more about whether the bids have been actually received. I believe they are not yet in for sure. That's what I have on that. Grassy Hill, I think there's nothing new that we covered from the last meeting. I don't know why this thing is misbehaving. We could try a new
I don't think
something's going on. The last I reported the actual Army Corps of Engineers was urging that we have, instead of two equal size, shall we call it, pipes going under the bridge, that it would be a larger one and a smaller one, and it's a minor engineering change. It would require some additional engineering work, but that seems to be what they want, and since they're a key player, why we think that's worthwhile to adopt their recommendation. So other than that, the permitting is basically, permitting and design work is just about completed, and then that will go to the Corps of Engineers for its consideration. The transfer station scale house, as I reported, the foundation has been installed at the transportation for the new building, and the contractor is ordering the materials, should be delivered fairly shortly, and once those materials are there, they can begin the framing, and It should be a 60-day proposal to get the building constructed. So we're eagerly awaiting that, and hopefully this can be wrapped up by the first part of December. And
Tim, are we behind then? Are we behind then? Because I believe it was November we were going to complete this project?
It's probably slipped maybe a week or two. I know that Phil was dealing with the contractor on materials to see, because that's been a big problem with a number of jobs, I'm sure. And he said that the materials that are required for the building should be available. That should not be a delay. So I think they might be able to make up some ground and get it by the end of November, but I think that's the target. So we're eager to see that get going and make some progress.
Are there any discussion, if it does get cold before this is done, how we keep the staff warm?
Well, I would have to use the existing facility and try our best to, it'll be sort of the inverse of cooling it this summer, and we'll have to, that building is not geared up for heating and cooling too well, but I would imagine a space heater of some sort would knock the chill off, but we'll just have to see how that goes. They also have the maybe other types of heating systems that could go in there that the contractors use when they're building houses without heat. You could put some other system in there to make it properly warm. So we'll have to see what elements that we need to round up for that. The next item is the Blood Street Partners Agreement. This is the agreement that Parks and Recreation has been working on, having to do with the owners of 176 Boston Post Road, and this would govern how the owners of that building would access the park, the hours, and all that sort of thing. It's been a long time in the works, and it's been finally concluded. The Park and Rec Commission authorized the chairman to sign the agreement, and so we're asking that Board of Selectmen authorize me to sign on behalf of the town, and then the 5 partners, one partner has left the group, and it will be a substitute down the road, but make 6. But at the moment, 5 partners would sign the agreement. So I sent a copy of this to the Selectmen, and it would be helpful to have a motion to authorize me, and then we'll get the signatures on the agreement, and it'll be concluded.
Everybody's in agreement with the agreement, basically?
Yeah, the partners have seen it, and Greg Hack, who's their principal spokesman, says that everything is set from their standpoint, and Park and Rec is set, so it's the town would sign it as well.
Do you need a motion then?
Yes, I think so.
A motion for you to sign it.
Second?
Okay. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion on the agreement?
Yes. Were you ever able to find out any data, any actual reason why Park and Rec, an appointed board of the Board of Selectmen, felt that there was such a concern to have this special agreement with tax-paying citizens that, this took about, year and a half for this, and I have yet to see any data to show that this really was going to be a problem.
Are you inferring that the agreement might not be necessary?
And I've said that before, yes.
I think that's an opinion. I think that Park and Rec has researched this and talked with the attorney and thought that having an outline for how things work is quite important. I don't think there are many incidents where there would be a building adjacent to a park and people would be utilizing the park quite the way this is contemplated. So I think it's similar to the school. They have an agreement with the town for the building, using the building and so forth. So I think it's a smart idea to have it on paper, and that sets it down for the record.
I think it does set a precedent, and I do think that the process, I think these tax-paying citizens were really taken to task unfairly, and I think that they have represented themselves fairly throughout the process. I'm glad that this is going to be ending, but I think it sets a bad precedent for tax-paying citizens that live near a public park in the future.
I think written agreements are always a good idea when it's a roadmap going forward, and I think it's important to have gone through this. Obviously, it took a lot longer than anybody contemplated, but here it is, and I think it's at least good that we have an agreement in place, and everyone seems to be agreeing to the terms. So we have a motion to authorize the first selectman to execute the agreement. May we vote on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Ames Open Space. The last time we met, we heard the presentation. There was actually an occasion last week to go to the property, to walk over the property to the Ames Preserve, and we had representatives from the Rockfall Foundation and from the Connecticut Audubon, which organizations donated money for certain signage and benches and so forth in the park. So it was nice. It was a good occasion to show them how things have worked out. So this is moving forward for the Planning Commission to review, and ultimately this will require a town meeting approval. I think we know that the seller will be having a seller mortgage, and then the Open Space Commission will also be pursuing grant opportunity to help pay for this, so that the Open Space Fund will be used to fund the town share, and depending on the timing, we'll also hopefully get the grant proceeds in. So this is moving as advertised, and we have not scheduled a town meeting as yet, but I think that'll be the next step once we have the Planning Commission make its 824 referral.
Tim, do you want to talk about how the Board of Finance dealt with this the day after our meeting?
Yes, they had some extensive discussion about it, and in the end they approved the proposition. So they approved the acquisition and recommended it to the town meeting.
Yeah, but we have to recommend it first, correct? So did they send it back to us, as I recall?
No. We recommended it. They recommended it. So I think we've done what we have to with the planning referral. That should be the final step, and then the town meeting could be...
we have to recommend it to town meeting. We only gave you permission to sign.
I guess we could set the town meeting once we have the planning commission, when that's finalized, we could then set that up.
Yeah, I think the part that I thought was probably worthy of discussion is the chair of the Board of Finance really took the Open Space Commission to task for not informing Board of Finance before their meeting about the purchase, and they were following the standard practice of the town. And I don't know, I actually have seen the chair speak to people disrespectfully in the past, but I have never witnessed anything like I saw that at that meeting, the way he treated appointed officials to the town. Ultimately, you're right, they voted for it, but his point, I believe, was that somehow they should have been informed, the Board of Finance should have been informed before that meeting that they were going to be asked to support a $400,000, or I'm sorry, what was it? Was that correct? Is that the amount?
Yes. That was acquisition.
Acquisition.
Depending on how grants come and go, the net prices will be less, hopefully.
So, to your knowledge, did they never know about this?
I can't speak for the Board of Finance. I think this has been discussed prior to that Board of Finance meeting. I think there had been public information about this prospective purchase. So if they were unaware of it, they may not have been, or he may not have been, but we were aware of it, and I think it was probably highlighted before, so I guess they would have appreciated having a heads up, so to speak, at a prior meeting, just to say, we're working on this, and you'll be seeing us later on with a real request, something of that sort, I guess. But
well, was that their responsibility, or was that this board's responsibility?
I guess it's up to the Open Space Committee to alert people who need to approve it. We were apprised of it, and so I think it would be up to the Open Space to talk to the Board of Finance if they. I'm not going to say that's whose responsibility, but I think Open Space was running with the ball. So if they had sensitized the Board of Finance that purchase was coming, that would be informational. I don't think it's a requirement. So I think they made the case quite well at the meeting, and ultimately it was approved. So that's where we stand.
Well, it came out of left field to me because the process seemed to follow the way that we had for the last acquisition. So I was surprised. I was surprised at the vehemence that the chairman displayed and the way he treated people in general, but certainly too.
I don't know if I'd characterize it as vehemence.
It was vehement.
Well, I don't.
And to the point where I was upset with myself not saying anything that night. None of us said anything. It was inappropriate. So I guess the takeaway then is, should another purchase acquisition come our way, then do we need to have a policy in place that informs appointed officials of what the process is? Because they were following the typical process.
Mm-hmm. I guess that would be something from the Board of Finance would like an early warning on something, that they could ask that be the case. If somebody's going to come with a proposal for the Board of Finance, they might say, please come to us when you know it's a real deal, and we will listen to you, and then when it's more finalized, you can come back and we will have known about it, something of that sort. I don't know that we need a hard and fast process. It's probably a good idea when something like that comes along that the appropriate approvals, sources of approvals are notified about it. But sometimes these are well known because it's been in the newspaper and so forth. So I think it would make good sense to let finance or anyone else who has to approve it know that something's coming along.
Just a courtesy.
Just
an easy courtesy would be fine.
Yeah. It makes good sense. Okay. Next up is Tanama Egg Landing. I had a conversation with the attorney, Collins, and he had a meeting with the property owners and went through some discussion about where we are, where we need to go. It was a cordial and fruitful discussion, and I think that the task now for the town is to review these documents, which they have separate and distinct from the paperwork that we receive. I think they have some backup materials, which are probably also in town hall records here or elsewhere, to clearly understand the ownership of the property. I think we heard Mr. Frampton say repeatedly that the public is welcome to come to the property. We heard, I think, that some people were yelled at and so forth, and one would hope that that wouldn't happen. And I think that certainly people coming to the property would want to come in a respectful way as well. It's a delicate balance there. But I think that I think he also asked that the boulder that is contemplated to block the trail would be put there so that vehicles wouldn't go down toward the water. And so this is going to take some time to have it worked out, but I think it's going to be an important thing to do. And so long as people are welcome to come, I think that people will not be turned away, so that we can continue with that. Once the bird murmuration concludes, they'll probably have less people going there, but nonetheless, I think, according to him, most of the folks that come are on foot, so that it shouldn't create much trouble in the meantime, and then we can evaluate the legal matters. And I think they had a conversation about what has to be done, and that'll unfold over the next, I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's 300 years of activity. So that's where we are with that at the moment.
So I think I need a little update a little bit further. So you're saying that despite the fact that several times Mr. Frampton was here over the last 9 months, and we had voted on approving signage and pretty much accepted the Harbor Management Commission's recommendations with just a couple of changes. And he sat here and said at least a couple times that he would comply if that was what the Board of Selectmen wanted done. And we all voted on it. It sounds like perhaps if the town had carried through with what we agreed, that this might have ended months ago, based on his comments. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and obviously subsequent to those discussions, he did his title work and now is coming to us with I wouldn't say changing the deal exactly, but he's asserting that he owns the property, or they own the property. And so we do not agree with that at this time, and until that can be sorted out, I think we're sort of in a holding pattern. We don't agree that he owns it, and he doesn't agree that we own it. So we want to, I think, keep people in a good mindset and work through this and get to a conclusion, and then we'll, if we own it, then that'll be, we're back to the arrangement that we set up before. Were he to own it, then he would probably have leverage to say, here's what I want to do. So I think we're in this sort of holding pattern at the moment.
But our attorneys are working on proving that the town owns it, correct?
See, corroborating, yeah. I think we need to have our counsel come up and say, I disagree with their title search, or gee, I guess they're right, which would be shocking, but it's possible, I guess.
But the attorney's obviously working on their own title search, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, what about his plantings and things? Has he been told not to plant those plants?
I would say he shouldn't be planting plants on the town landing as we know it. And, yeah, certainly. I don't think he should be doing that. If the plants are sitting there, I think we could say they probably should be moved to his property until this is resolved.
Yeah, after our last meeting, I got a note from him, which I did not bring in the minutes, but basically it said something to the effect that he was surprised that I hadn't looked at the document he provided you, of course, we hadn't seen, and that rather than waste my time taking pictures of his property, he would provide me with a set of the documents. So he did. I don't think that's a very proper way of discussing the situation with the selectmen. I mean, some of the people that have spoken to us have indicated they've been yelled at. I'm beginning to believe that that is really the case, and someone can say that to me in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than waste your time taking photographs. I was on town property. I had every right to do that. So
Yeah.
I think this board ought to recommend that our attorney put in writing exactly what the situation is, because I haven't seen anything from our attorney. I haven't seen anything that says this is the current state of play, and tell him he's not to plant. He's not to yell at people, and that if he does, we will be able to, we'll send the police. We should be able to protect our residents going down there from abuse.
That's correct.
Well, I think we need to put something in writing.
I think we can easily have Collins do that. Does everybody agree? I thought he sent out a letter before to cease and desist.
Well, I guess what we probably need some sort of an interim thing that says the town intends to use it as it has in the interim. We are not saying that his conclusion is incorrect. We're not saying it's correct. We need to independently corroborate what the facts are from our attorney's perspective. And I think in the interim, we need to have it so that the owners don't berate the public coming to the landing. If they are acting in a way that's contrary to the way it should be, then he can deal with that. But in terms of just going to the landing and so forth, the way it always has been, I think that of course, I think it's a two-way street, and I think hopefully the public who goes there is respectful of their property rights, and they in turn are respectful of the townspeople's rights until this is sorted out. And if the town and the owners can have an agreement that says we're going to be patient and get to the point where this is resolved, that would be a good outcome, as far as I can see.
So why don't we have Collins draft him a letter saying that?
Yeah, and I think the attorney did meet with them, and I think he found them to be quite reasonable, and so one would hope that we could work something out along those lines, and then work on the legal aspects of it and come up with a conclusion. He said even if it is confirmed that he owns it, he would welcome the public. So, you know, we want that spirit of cooperation to exist. And if it's true that he does own it, I think that would be very valuable for the public to access it.
Well, until it was proven that he owns it, it's still the town property, and he's got to understand that.
Understand, but if it were that he was confirmed as the owner, you wouldn't want him to have a very bad experience and say, well, now that it's proven that I own it, here's the new deal, and fill in the blanks. So I think we want to be polite and reasonable and get to the end of the legal review.
What exactly is Attorney Collins or his firm doing? The legal review entails what? What is he doing?
I think they would have to go back and look at the records similar to what the owners did. I don't know exactly what they intend to do or are doing, but they have been, and I don't know what time element it will require, because
or the budget. How much is this costing the town?
I don't
the taxpayers
know.
For this?
It's going to be somewhat open-ended, I suppose, depending on what they encounter. But if this is a sensitive issue, and I think we have to go through it. And once they get going, they could probably give us an approximation of hours and therefore cost. But at this point, if we say you can only spend so much money, that wouldn't be, you know, if they get halfway through it and they have to stop because they've reached the end of the budget, then that would be a pretty unfortunate outcome. So it's...
Are we talking 5,000, do you think? Or?
Mary Jo, I do not know. So I think following the meeting that they had, they're working through things, and hopefully we'll get a little more specifics as we come along here. But
Tim, do you know how much time they've spent to date then? How much they've charged us to date?
No. I know there's been some conversations amongst people in the office, but in terms of where they are and how much they've spent and where they need to go, that's a reasonable question to ask once they get into it a little bit, and it should be clear, I expect, but at this time, I don't have numbers.
Okay.
Okay, the American Recovery Plan, the committee will be meeting on Wednesday, inaugural meeting. It will be an opportunity to have the group come together for the first time and do introductions, and to set the stage as to where we are, where we hope to go. We will be providing some handouts for the group, and can share with them what requests have come in directly to us, And probably we could, from news coverage, understand what some of the other towns have been doing. This is mainly an introductory thing. And then following that, there would be, the next step would be to try to come up with a roadmap for where we are, where we want to go, and who's going to help us, and do we want to create buckets of budget money for this and that and the other thing. So I think it's also very new that I think we will have to wait and see how the group might break out into smaller groups and come back and so forth. So it's going to be challenging to come up with a good concrete plan right off the bat. But I think once we start talking about it, then it'll become clearer, and then we can get experience. I know that the Council of Governments is talking about engaging somebody at their level that would be helpful to focus people as well. So there might be some resources like that. So it's
if we can get somebody from the COG.
Yeah.
Did you ever get notification from Ledgelight? I've seen things in the press that Ledgelight has requested 1%
Yes.
of member towns.
Yeah, that we've received 4 or 5 different requests.
But from Ledgelight, did you get one
Yes.
for 1%? Okay, because I didn't see us listed. I think the message from Steve Mansfield was that the towns have been supportive of their request for 1%.
Right, and there was the soup kitchen had a request, and so there have been some direct appeals, which I think you'd have to certainly keep track of that, but I think we need to, there's probably a lot more out there that we haven't seen.
Will you be bringing those to the meeting, though? Will you be bringing those requests?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. We'll say what we've received to date, realizing that's not a complete list.
And what time is the meeting on the 6th?
Noon.
And it's here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, under new business, I think at our last meeting we talked about the proposed merger between the Estuary Transit District and the Middletown Transit District. The Estuary would be the organization that our director would be the director if this is all approved and agreed to. He would be the director of the consolidated district. I sent the Selectmen a background piece on the merger. The Council of Government, which consists of elected officials from the 17 towns, were unanimous in approving the concept, and so the transit district is going out to the various towns asking whether the boards, the selectmen, city councils, etc., would also be willing to endorse the concept. And then the final paperwork would come from the DOT, which would be signed by the commissioner, essentially approving the merger. There would be considerable funds from state and federal sources that would come to play. The transit district gets a fair amount of federal and state money already, but so this would continue that pattern. We were told that the fees that we pay the transit district would not be radically different than they are at the moment. And so it seems with these two relatively small transit districts, this would be a very sensible thing to do, and bigger is better, to do all the economy of scale of the transit district. So there was a resolution at the end of the paperwork, so we can just consider whether we would want to sign on as authorizing that resolution. Did you all received it?
Yeah. You need a motion, or?
Yes, I think it would.
That we're going to join the new district?
It would be a motion to authorize the first selectman to execute the
okay.
Estuary Transit District resolution.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Other discussion on it?
Tim, are there any towns that are not in favor of this resolution?
This came out rather recently, so since all the elected officials that are part of the COG voted for it, I would hope that most everyone would. I don't think it has to be unanimous, but it's. I think the more the merrier, because I think the grassroots support for the concept is important, and I think it's been widely supported so far. Anything else before we vote?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Last on a new business, Glenn Macy, who is a part-time resident, was a full-time resident. He has been inducted as the new president of Nichols College in Massachusetts. He was the provost of Bryant, but it's, I think, noteworthy that he retired as a Coast Guard captain, and I think it's always good news when one of our citizens is elevated to a president of a college. It's a very nice ceremony in Massachusetts. It's a business school, and I think it's about 4,000 undergraduates, and they have a graduate program. So it's congratulations to Glenn. Okay, so at this point we will open it up to public comment. So people who wish to make public comment, please come forward and state your name, and then we'll go to the telephone following that.
Hello again. My name is Sheila Riffle. I reside at 57 Colt Lane. This is my third meeting in the last month. And I want to speak to just a few issues. I will try to keep it brief out of respect for everyone's time. I have to start with acknowledging that this issue of Tanama Egg Landing over in the Colt Lane and Tanama Egg area, I'm fully aware that this is a first world problem. And I just want to acknowledge that there are a lot of other things going on in the world, a lot of other things going on in Connecticut that could certainly use everyone's energy and time. Having said that, I think that this issue could have and should have been resolved long before now. So, Selectman Griswold, I just want to speak to a couple of quotes as you were giving the update on this issue. That it's going to take some time to work out, which I can completely respect. When I attended my first Board of Selectmen meeting with an interest in this particular topic, I had noted that 9 months had passed since the meeting minutes of this board stated that a sign was going to be put back up in place and had been taken down. So now we're at 10 months, and we're being told it's going to take some time to work out. All the while, Mr. Frampton and his wife, again, I have no disregard for them whatsoever, they are continuing to behave as though that property does belong to them, and frankly, sir, so are you. You mentioned that the attorney reviewed documents and that the conversation with Attorney Collins was a fruitful discussion. You said we don't agree he owns it. I have to tell you, as a resident who has had brief access to that, to the cove in the short time that we've lived in town, and again, I've mentioned before that one of the reasons we purchased where we did in Old Lyme was because of that access point to the water. I feel like the town is behaving as though Mr. Frampton and his wife own that property. I can completely respect where you're coming from in terms of if it should turn out that it's proven that that property that is situated, that parcel of land that's situated between 12 and 19 Tanama Egg is in fact owned by the owners of those two parcels of land, that we wouldn't want to upset anyone and have them take it away, but frankly, that to me is permissive, and the behavior has been permissive. In one of those earlier meetings that I did not attend, but in reviewing the minutes, one of the discussions had to do with identifying some places where people could park, because the reality is, even though, I mean, we're probably one of the closest residents to that landing, and we still, it can't carry our kayaks down there, so we have to take it in the car to get the kayaks down to get them in the cove. So, you know, utilizing language like he's allowing people to come on foot, he shouldn't be planting new greenery or whatever it is, tells me that you haven't been down to that property since the last meeting, because things are planted. I don't know the exact property lines, but there is definitely plantings there. And I will just tell you again that the lack of action has caused some very unnecessary conflict, I believe. So I would ask that we don't spend a lot of time on taxpayer dollars for our first world problem, and that you hastily expect the attorney to do their own research and not just accept what you've received from the current homeowner as the truth. There was, my first meeting here, there was mention of an issue, I'm not sure where it was, but my understanding is that somebody was mowing property that they were behaving as though it was their property and it was town property, and immediately a cease and desist letter was sent out. I don't understand why that hasn't been done yet, just so we can continue to behave in the neighborhood as we have been, as though that is town property and accessible. I would remind you that one of the questions that was asked a month ago was, who's been paying taxes on that piece of property? Because I'm under the impression that no one has, since it's been believed to belong to the town. I also know that when Diana Atwood Johnson lived there, that there was a similar claim, and I don't know if it was an argument or a disagreement with the town, but somehow that resolved. And you know, I only had the pleasure of meeting Diana once. I can't imagine she wouldn't have done her homework to figure out who in fact owns the property. So I just feel that this has gone on way too long, and it's unfortunate. And while I'm up here, I just need to mention a couple of other things. I expressed last time I was here my disappointment that these meetings are at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Board of Selectmen, I am learning very quickly, is you talk about information that as a taxpayer I really should know about. And as I stated in my last comments, I'm more in tune to what's going on. I'm learning every day, and I think it's important for us as taxpayers to know what's going on. But it's also difficult to get to a meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Certainly for me, certainly for my wife, and I would imagine that other people are in that boat. I'll go on to two more brief topics. One, I'm curious as to why we don't recite the pledge at the beginning of these meetings, the Pledge of Allegiance. Has that ever been done in the past? And did we just stop doing that? Or I just witnessed a lot of town meetings in different forums, and I usually see that happening at the beginning. So I just wondered if that was stopped for some reason. And then finally, in the 2 past meetings that I've attended, I have heard Selectwoman Nozel speak on the declaration that racism is a public health crisis, and asking for that topic to be discussed or on the agenda at one of these meetings. And in going back through meeting minutes for the past year, I cited multiple times that she has brought up the same issue. And in the meeting minutes, it was stated, and I don't have the dates in front of me, I apologize, but both Mr. Griswold and Mr. Kerr stated that you did not like the language of it. You felt as though the language of the recommended declaration is stating a problem in a line where you don't think there is one. And my question, again, as a taxpayer, would be, how do you know? Because I've never received a survey. I've never been part of a forum to discuss how racism impacts people in this town. And I would be more than happy to participate in something like that, just for my own learning. If it's a matter of putting a committee together, like most people, I really don't have a lot of time, but I would make the time because I think it's important. So I would just ask that you entertain the request that you're getting and reach out to people other than yourselves to determine what those experiences or beliefs are. Thank you for your time.
I would like to also address what you were saying.
Come forward.
I made some notes in case.
A name, please.
Charlotte Scott.
SCOTT?
No, 1T. I made some notes in case I forget my name or where I live. In the right direction. Is racism a public health crisis? Well, part of the answer depends on how one construes the word crisis. The dictionary doesn't define crisis as something imminent. In this case, the crisis has been ongoing for 400 plus years. I've only lived in Old Lyme about 10 years. However, my 6th great grandfather, who died in 1755, was born down the river. And before that, in the 17th century, my ancestors nearly dominated this area with names like Rogers and Gilbert, Lord and Warner. Some of them, I'm very sad to say, owned slaves. The Witness Stones Project was an awesome beginning to a discussion of our past. However, it was just the beginning, and it doesn't address the question before us today: is racism a public health crisis? In a town that is over 96% white, it is certainly appropriate to have a conversation about it. While many white slave owners became wealthy and prominent, how did their so-called servants fare? We don't have a clue. What we do know, we can speculate how 4 centuries of discrimination created an even greater wealth disparity. The ongoing pandemic has shown how deprivation of health care, education, and the lack of good housing has disproportionately and negatively affected people of color. So why don't the selectmen just encourage residents to have a discussion on the subject? When our government doesn't discuss matters like this, the topics go underground. To whisper, campaigns, rumors, fear-mongering, lies, and misinformation. I thought with the topic of public housing on my own block, people were discussing, what if the wrong kind of people move in? I respectfully request that you folks call for open discussions in our community on whether residents feel racism is a public health crisis. I don't fear people disagreeing with me. I mean, after all, disagreements are what make us a democracy.
I'm Kathleen Tracy, 76 Hartford Avenue. I'm here today because at the last meeting, I was on the phone, and I was hoping to make a public comment, but I wasn't able to make a public comment because I was not given the opportunity. And for almost 3 months now, throughout the summer, I came here and I asked, what can you do to try to learn the system so that you can unmute the people who are on the phone trying to make a public comment? And I am not the only one that's having this problem. I've had it consistently, and I feel like the only way I can make a comment is if I come in person. I think that's wrong. I think we can do better than that. I think we can learn how to use the system and get people who are on the phone to have a comment. Why that hasn't happened, I do not know. The comment I wanted to make last week is concerning an appointment to a commission. I think you appointed Sloan Danenauer to a new commission. He was earlier appointed to the Soundview Commission. I also tried to get on the Soundview Commission, was unsuccessful. And since that time, of his appointment, I've only seen him at one meeting. To me, if you're going to be on a commission, you need to be committed to going to the commission meetings. So when I found out he was getting appointed to another commission, when there's 2 other people who are also up for that commission, it seems like if you've already got a commission, let's let some of the other people take the responsibility, especially if you yourself are not taking full responsibility to go to the meetings. Why would you point him to another commission? I was appalled at that, and I had no chance to say that, but I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to say that now. Thank you.
I don't know where that's coming from, but I'm Linda Actavellis, and I live at 57 Cold Lane.
Try shutting yours off.
There's a number of things on my mind this afternoon. A lot of it's already been said. I'm one that believes when there's a certain behavior you want to cease, you can try ignoring it, and maybe it will cease. Sometimes that's not effective. In fact, sometimes you want to see behaviors happen. You want to see action happen. And I'm here today to say I'm here to see some action happen. We're all asking for action to happen. I came in at the middle of the update. I don't believe there really was an update to Tanama Egg Landing, other than some discussion that the paperwork's in the attorney's hand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel like I got an update on where the attorneys or the paperwork that was given, should have been given 3 months ago, was given 1 month ago. We shouldn't even be where we are with the paperwork in hand, if we dealt with this 9 months ago. And I continue to be very disappointed in that, because I put a trust in government, I put a trust in the town in doing what's right for the people. I do not feel like this has been handled in a way that's right for the people. Yes, I moved to where I live because I loved the ocean. I grew up by the ocean. I had access to the ocean as a kid. This is the first time in life I've come this close to having access to the ocean. In part, I purchased my home. In fact, it was a critical moment of deciding whether or not to purchase it. It was the reason that tipped me over to purchase, so that I can access the water. We drive kayaks down, so I don't even like the permissible language of being allowed to walk. If you're going to permit walking, and whatever it may be, you can't walk to the water. I don't know if you've been down there, but you cannot walk to the water. It's muddy. You sink. So I go by boat, but I need my car to get my boat there. So this should have been resolved, and I'm asking for a more specific update. I would even be in favor of prior to 2 weeks from now, because I feel like it's 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks.
9 months, nothing is happening. Very, very disappointed in that. And I can't wrap my head around it, quite frankly. I just can't understand it. I'm also concerned, and I look out to everybody here. Everybody here is wearing a mask. I don't understand how something could be a mandate in a building and it not be followed. If that were my case, I would have, in my place of work, there would be some great concerns, and there rightfully should be great concerns around that. I'm also concerned about the lack of this proclamation that racism is a mental health crisis, is a crisis in our nation and our world. I'm very concerned that that's not being looked at. I've read about this in our local paper. I know there are people in this town that care about this topic and want to do something about this topic. However, their voices are not being heard. And I wonder why. I don't understand it. I think we need to give the people of this town a voice, and we need to hold a forum by which they can express their feeling around this and their thoughts around this, their history of understanding around this. To have a woman stand up here and to say today, with, you could tell, a heartfelt expression of knowing in her family was involved in owning slaves at one point in time. That takes courage. That takes bravery. And that's the kind of people we need to hear from to change what's going on in our world, because yes, this is a crisis with racism. Thank you.
Lynn, could you spell your last name, please?
I'll spell it for you.
Sorry?
I'll spell it. I-A-C-O-B-E-L-L-I-S.
Thank you.
I guess you were next. And we want to limit it to a short time. We can't go.
Thank you. Yeah, I was here 2 weeks ago for the first time and quite shocked, appalled, amazed about a lot of things here. I'm amazed that I've expressed some concerns last time and haven't heard anything about anybody, so I'm going to mention and ask again and let me know what you might be doing about these things. I talked about the speeding traffic on Shore Road all along the beach area from down at Hawksnest and all the way over to Pointwood. Police do not patrol it. If they do, they're down on Ferry Road, or they're down in the state picnic area, which does not slow people down by the time they're down at the beach area again, which isn't that far away. They're back up to 50 miles an hour. That's a 30-mile-an-hour zone. I made 5 phone calls to the resident state trooper, and supposedly the barracks transferred my address, the name to them, and I never heard from him. On the 5th call, I did get the town police department on Shore Road, and somebody got back to me within a week and said, we're doing the best we can, left that on a phone message, and nothing's changed. I also talked to you about signage. So the police are not accessible here. I don't know if it's just me or if other people have the same problem. I saw in the annual town report, the resident state troopers budgeted salary and fringe are $198,000. I want to know what he does for $198,000. I came to town hall and asked to have a job description. Nobody knew where it was, if they even had one. I had to fill out a Freedom of Information form to get that public document that nobody should be hiding or not know where it is. Nobody in town hall could tell me where to go or what office to access. But the very next morning, I got an email, and here's the Freedom of Information you requested. Okay? I also mentioned about, along with the traffic down in the line, that we need more signage. You did a sidewalk project, it's very nice.
but I can't cross from my side of the street across the crossway to access those sidewalks. Is anybody thinking about doing anything about that? Is the ball rolling on that? We need more, as I told you, we need more signage for pedestrians. Go down to Niantic, look at all the signage they have for pedestrian crossings. And speed limits and blinking lights, and maybe you'll get some ideas for what to do. So speed enforcement down there is really important, and it does not happen, or happen where it should be happening. I also asked you about considering a moratorium on all future commercial development from down at Halls Road all the way down through Point of Woods. Because we have numerous buildings that are derelict, boarded up, 6 feet of grass in front of them, no occupancy, and I listed them all last time for you. There's 10 or 11. And we don't need any more commercial development down there that isn't something that's in the best interest for our residential community down there. We don't need people to build and then fly away and leave fluff. So, to get to that end, I asked you last time, and I'm asking you again to consider establishing a vision committee for the development of any further commercial building between Halls Road and Point of Woods. Because we just can't keep people throwing stuff up there that does not serve the community needs. It's nothing we're interested in having. So that we can all look at, as a group, what it is we think might work down there. And I hope that I'll have some responses from somebody soon about any or all of these issues, so we can begin to move forward into some concrete, positive steps. Thank you.
Excuse me, I didn't get your name.
Carolyn Ryan, Miranda, M-I-R-A-N-D-A.
Hi, Rebecca Griffin, and I just want to thank these two ladies
Did you
for
just name and address for her, please?
Rebecca Griffin, Boston Post Road, Old Line. So I want to thank these two ladies for their comments about the Tanama Egg Landing. I called you last year in November and told you about the signage being down. I've emailed several times. I think we had a meeting in January. And the last email that I sent to you, Tim, or Mr. Griswold, I should say, sorry, you had said that in the last email that when I asked you, I take it that we are holding off on signage and parking, and you said no. Still not there. I went down yesterday. I get it. You want your property to be pretty. You own beautiful property on the water. But I honestly believe that they're planting things to make it more and more difficult for vehicle access. It's nearly impossible to get down there and to try to turn around now. This is almost 10 months in the making, and it's gotten worse. And as far as I can tell, the only people that they're respectful to are maybe you, because I grew up down there, and I've never had anybody talk to me in the manner with which, get off my property. You're on my property. 50 years of going down there. And there's just no excuse for it. It's not their property. It's owned by the town. Let's act like it and show them that it's our property. I don't get the delay. Can you explain that? I really want to know.
This is public comment. You make a comment. It's not a dialogue.
So I'm done. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone on the phone wish to make a public comment? Anyone on the phone who would like to make a public comment?
I think you have to do *53.
Try it one more time.
*5.
Hello, this is Kim Thompson.
Anyone on
Hello.
the phone that would like to make a public comment?
Hi, my name is Kim Thompson. I live on Littlefield Lane. I would like to make public comment. Can
Go
you hear
ahead.
me? Great. I was not planning to make public comment, but given discussion earlier in the meeting, I feel that it's necessary. I'd like to make comments on 2 items that were discussed earlier on. The first being the discussion of the purchase of the Ames property and the discussion that happened at the Board of Finance meeting. I just want to reiterate what Mary Jo said and support the impression that she gave that the chairman of that committee was hostile and disrespectful and spoke to appointed members of public boards in a very unprofessional manner. I was listening on the phone and I was horrified. So I want to support what Mary Jo was saying there. Second, I live in the Littlefield Lane and Colt Lane neighborhood. As I was listening to the meeting on the phone, I took a walk down to Tanama Egg Landing, and the very large plantings that were down there sort of bundled up in root bags 2 weeks ago have been planted where it would make sense to me for there to be parking or where there would be opportunity for a vehicle to turn around. So just reiterating the points that others made, that there is activity going on down there that should have been stopped, that someone should have contacted town legal counsel months ago to institute a cease and desist order because the property owner down there continues to take steps to limit access to that area. So thank you for your time. Thank you for learning how to unmute the phones, as I've been unable to make comment in past weeks. And I hope that things can move forward productively with those projects. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else on the phone wish to make public comment?
Yes, this is Anna Ryder. Hello?
Go ahead.
I would like to reiterate that I'm extremely disappointed that racism resolution that says racism is a public health crisis, that we acknowledge that has not been on the agenda for the past year. And I would really like to make sure that that gets discussed by the Selectmen soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else wish to make a public comment? Okay, so that brings us to other business.
I have none, you covered it.
Okay.
I guess I'll go. I think I'm going to start by discussing the resolution declaring racism a public health crisis. And I want to thank all the brave people that spoke today, here and on the phone. And it has been a long year bringing this up. And I've tried to be thoughtful. I've tried to share different perspectives, different versions of the resolution. And I've asked for it to be put on the agenda, discussed today, and it never has been. So Today, under other business, I would like to review a few things because I am requesting this board do the right thing and put it on the agenda at our next meeting for a vote. The resolution declaring racism a public health crisis in Old Lyme has been shared for a year in different versions thereof. It's a nationwide discussion that we are not addressing. The state's addressing it. Over 22 towns are addressing it, but Old Lyme isn't. You know, let's just be real. Racism is institutional in the United States. You can't just ignore it. You can't say you don't like the word without providing some alternative, which I tried to do. The number of residents supporting the resolution far outnumbers people who have been unhappy with it. You know, the resolution does not have legal authority. It's not an ordinance. I remember one person calling in and said, you can't go backwards. I mean, this is a policy statement, a vision statement for the leadership in this community. That's all it is. It's a value statement. And it acknowledges racism that has led to unhealthy outcomes for many people. And that's just physical, it's not just COVID related, it's mental health, it's physical health, it's economic, it's nutrition, it's wealth, as we heard tonight. We know that there have been racist incidents in this town. We know that. We know there have been signs that have been desecrated for the Black Lives Matter movement. We know there's been racial slurs at the Griswold Preserve last summer. We saw a guy here calling neighbors a jihad last meeting. And we know historically there are deeds in this town that specifically stated certain races could not buy or rent in Old Lyme. And the result is this disparity in wealth that was mentioned today. We didn't start this, but we have an obligation as leaders in this town to do something about it, to make sure that the policies are looked at with racial equity in mind, with a racial equity lens. It's not a feel-good piece, as some people have said. It's actionable. There are steps that, when we sign this, and I hope you will sign this at our next meeting, that encourage the town to develop data, to reach out to people that do this for a living, to partner with them, to advise the Board of Selectmen, whether it's us or the next Board of Selectmen, on ways to make sure that the policies we set are welcoming and address the racial disparities gap, not only here, but in our state. Okay. I wanted to ask Tim if you had any update on the beach cleaning situation we discussed at the last meeting. So we have a person who's been under contract. I know that his contract did not come to this board, who historically runs a debt to the town for doing his job, and yet we continue to hire him. Have you made some special arrangements with this person? What's the status?
There are contractors who bring materials to the land transfer station, and they pay on account. We've had some discussions with Harry Plout about this, and I believe, I haven't confirmed it, but he was to clear up his obligation either Friday or today. I think there was an amount owed. Clearly, it's an accommodation, and if it doesn't operate properly, then we've got to, we just cannot extend that convenience to people. Some of the contractors who do this are very good at cleaning up whatever has been accumulated on a regular basis, and that's the way we wanted this to work. So if this has not been attended to, then I think his privilege should be revoked, and he would have to pay as he goes. Some of the contractors, they send people to the transfer station. It's not the owner necessarily doing it, so it's a convenience. But if it can't operate correctly and timely, why, then I think that convenience can't be accommodated any longer.
What does his contract say he's supposed to do? What does his contract say he is supposed to do?
It doesn't talk about that. It tells how he's supposed to clean the beach.
There's nothing about payment in the contract?
Well, he charges the town for the cleaning now he does other work in other areas, and so he brings the material to the transfer station. So the way it should work is if somebody has accumulated slips for delivering material, then they would come in, say, on a weekly basis or with some frequency, and to take care of it. It should not go longer than a certain period of time.
Can I see a copy of that contract? Can you put it in my mailbox? I'd like to review it. Because, this is...
You're not going to see...
Why does he get special...
He's not. There are other people who have that as well.
Well, for all my years as a selectwoman, this is my 10th year, this is the only one I've been aware of that's historically indebted to the town, that doesn't pay on time.
Now, you asked if people have the accommodation, not whether they pay on time.
Well, okay. He's the only one I've heard that doesn't pay on time, and now he's the only one I've heard that has gotten a special accommodation.
I don't know what you're talking about. Special accommodation.
That you've allowed him to continue the practice and not pay his debt. That's an accommodation.
That's right. And if he, as I say, if he has not done what he said to do, with this recent one, I think that will end that accommodation.
Okay. And then we have been asked a couple times by email recently, and then, maybe a year ago, by the finance department to sign off on changes to the employee handbook. I guess changes that we've agreed to, but we never formally reviewed them or approved them in the handbook. And it seems like that's something that we should have been easily able to do.
I know there were modifications to the handbook some time ago. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but there were some changes in the wording, and those were changed in the document, but I don't know.
But we didn't approve the document yet. So my understanding from the emails are that we need to formally approve the revision to the handbooks. I guess we approved some of the language here, but we didn't approve the handbook changes. So is that something we can do at our next meeting?
Why don't you and I talk about it, and we can see specifically what...
Well, there's emails that's been sent to all of us. So.
Well, let's talk about it, yes.
Okay. A couple more things, I think. Starting October 1st, there's a new national flood insurance program under FEMA 2.0, and it's been in the news. It made me go back and look and see how we stand with the community rating system. We used to be a member of that program. And we had meetings here in Town Hall about some of that, especially before Storm Sandy. And the nice thing about the community rating system is that towns that voluntarily participate, basically it says that you have a floodplain management system. It offers or it allows homeowners a discount on their flood insurance, and we live around a lot of water here, so I thought it made sense. But I was surprised to find we are no longer on the community rating system, which means our residents do not get this discount, and the new program, from what I can tell, requires the town to do a few more things, so we're no longer grandfathered. I've left a message with the Connecticut DEP on this because I'd like to find out what happened. Did we get a letter saying, you're lapsed or you're probationary? Do you know anything about that?
No.
I also left a message with our land use board because, it's very disconcerting that we were one of the few towns in Connecticut, and it certainly makes sense along the shoreline, to be a member of this.
Mm-hmm. Did you check with land use to see if they're aware of it?
I did leave a message, yep. But it first came to my mind when the person from the COG came to speak to us after the natural mitigation plan was updated, so a couple months ago. And she reported, she suggested the first thing the town should do is become a member of the community rating system, or the NFIP. And I was said, well, we've always been a member. That's the first time I heard about this. And then when I saw the 2.0 changes, it jogged my memory to go in and look it up. So apparently we haven't been a member for some time now, and I was totally surprised, and I'm disappointed for our residents. Wanted to ask you again about update on the cyber insurance situation. A lot of places are getting that insurance because it's costly to a town to have a cyber attack. And I know that for about a year this has been on the discussion, and I was wondering what you could tell me about that.
Yeah, I spoke with Dave Kelsey, and he was going to do some work. He may have also been talking with Michael Ryder about that. So I think there's some progress going with that, with a company that Dave is familiar with. As we know, Kerma stopped writing the insurance, so we need to line up a different carrier. So I'm not sure where we stand with that, but Dave was checking out because he uses a particular company, and we would fill out an application which we would submit, and it asks a bunch of questions. And I think CT Comp has helped us with a number of safeguards so that would help us with getting the insurance. So I'm waiting to hear back where that stands.
Okay, so hopefully we'll get an update next meeting then.
Mm-hmm.
The HR situation, human resources, I think the last time we chatted, you'd confirmed that it seemed that your goal or your plan was to do the job description review first as opposed to the HR policy setting or the personnel function second. And I think when we talked 2 weeks ago, you said you thought there was going to be a meeting in a couple of weeks with this new group. Has that occurred?
I haven't seen them as yet. I know that there was a proposal, there was a retainer type of thing, and they will be coming in very shortly. I think the work is intended to be done during this quarter, before the end of the year. So I think they are due to come very shortly. I don't have a date as yet, but that will be happening.
Well, just for what it's worth, discussed the process, if you will, with HR expert in another town who came from Pfizer and now works for a municipality. And this person agrees that it makes more sense to have the HR function filled first before we do the job description analysis, because we already have many job descriptions, so it seems like we're putting, things are out of order. I know that's the more expensive part of this, but if we're going to do it right, it seems like we ought to have the HR personnel in place.
Who's making comments?
I spoke with an HR representative in another municipality who also worked for Pfizer. And she felt that the process would be more beneficial and productive by doing the gap analysis first to find out what we have, what we need, what policies are required, for example, by OSHA that aren't being met. All of that first, since we do have job descriptions. But it sounds like our process is doing the reverse, and it just hits me as something we ought to refocus on, because, as you know, the Board of Finance also has been asking for this HR function to be done.
I'm not aware of this person. Is it?
No, I don't think you were.
You've had conversations?
It's just, yeah. No, I reached out personally to another municipality who has an HR person that manages that function for that busy town. And that was her recommendation also, that similar to what the Board of Finance is recommending, that we look at the HR needs as far as policies and personnel first before we look at job descriptions. And finally, where are we at with hiring a policeman, part-time policeman? Now that the summer's done.
What I heard from the state trooper was that a couple of people were interviewed. I have not heard that there's been any further progress with that in terms of hiring someone. But I think it would be a good idea, because the part-time police play a significant role in our police operations. So he's out of town at the moment, but I think if we have some good candidates, that it would be worthwhile to get them engaged and then use them. Obviously, in the summer we have a higher need than in the wintertime, but it would be helpful to have that resource, because we certainly could use the assistance come the summertime.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good news, because I know last time you said you weren't thinking we were going to hire anybody, so that's good to hear. And I have one extra thing I forgot. I know that I'm not part of your Public Works negotiating committee. That contract is up to the end of June, public information. Can you let me know how that's going?
Negotiations are continuing, and so we're hopeful that we will soon conclude, but we have not concluded.
And then you'll bring that to the Board of Selectmen to be ratified?
So the board has to ultimately sign off on it, yeah.
So at some point, will you fill me in on what's going on?
I can do that. It would be, not for public consumption, but yes.
Thank you.
Yep, that's fine. 5:40.
Second.
Okay. Move seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.